with this series, I call it my regret vase series, and I'm deeply interested in just like bringing this sort of moment, this specific moment of regret into each of these vessels, and can I like embed that moment into them in the making process, and make that relatable to our experience, because I think we all probably have moments of regret in our life, and not that I'm here to dredge up past or anything, but this is something that happens. So working with the idea of regret and working on the wheel was something that I wanted to bring together. And I don't call myself a potter. I wouldn't necessarily identify with the goals of a potter, and I respect those sort of like goals and that mode of making. But I do have a lot of experience on the potter's wheel, on the just like throwing and using clay, and I like how part of what's inherent to that is sort of the symmetry, at least the roundness of it, and that's not to say that you can't make those things unround or work with them afterwards, but you just start with that. And there's a building, and there's a long history in the potter's wheel of like making stuff for everyday use naturally. But then with that everyday use, using that sort of form, that sort of idea of vessel, and vessels also come with their own sort of like loaded sort of ideas and like being bodies and containing things. All this sort of stuff I was very aware of, and I liked using that sort of form for this series. Maybe as a metaphor or whatever, but just then to bring in like my other sorts of working practices. So I'm interested in vessel aesthetics, but then I'm also just interested, like I said, in like how do I bring experience of humanity more than just like physically touching this, but like from the conceptual point, in like one specific idea. So as I made these things, I'd intentionally push myself to like a single moment where I thought, okay, I'm doing really well. I know this is going to turn out well, and I shouldn't do this. Like this is, I think this is probably a mistake. Like it might ruin the whole thing. And at that moment, saying, all right, well, that's what's going to happen here. But trying to do it in such a way that it's masked still. So, there's certain things that I was doing that I like knew would happen and it'd be good. But then trying to balance that out. I think in all my work, so this is just maybe a newer series, I guess. I haven't worked specifically on the wheel in a long time to make artwork, and I do think of these things as artworks. They could certainly be something you stick a flower in, but being a vessel, clay holds that double space where it can be a functional item, but it can also just be an item that you think upon. So this, I think of these as artworks. And all my artwork, I'm interested in those ideas I said, but I'm also interested in like how the person is going to interact with them. So thinking about display and how we move and walk around these things, and then how we experience them is really important. Here, bringing in the sort of like wood and the sort of like more table-like display helps bridge that gap, I think, between this being a piece of artwork, but then this also being something that you could interact with, look at, or just experience in your everyday life, possibly. So with my vessel series here, you got 7 vessels. It's just like a subset of like 19 or 20 so vessels, and I hope what people can get out of this is certainly being inspired by maybe some of the dynamic or radical glazing choices, or just the sort of balance between the sort of forming process of the more rigid and the more free, but also just like being drawn in and thinking about that sort of relationship of vessel and embodied human experience, and whether that is my specific thing that I was bringing in with regret, or whether it's something else. Ultimately those are my goals, to sort of, as I said, like see if simple materials like clay, glaze, wood can show us and reveal to us greater mysteries and ideas of the human experience.